Happy holidays, everyone! On this very festive day, I'd like to talk to you all about one of our most controversial seasonal celebrities. I'm talking, of course, about Santa. Part 1. The Origins of Santa. Most people think of Santa as an amiable larger gentleman who brings Christmas joy to smiling children, and who can blame them? If you look at the Wikipedia entry for Santa, it would have us believe Santa Claus is generally depicted as a portly, jolly, white-bearded man, sometimes with spectacles, wearing a red coat with white fur collar and cuffs, white fur cuffed red trousers, a red hat, and white fur and black leather belt, and boots, who carries a bag full of gifts for children. And doesn't that sound lovely? But in fact, this esoteric claim hides a secret: the dark side of Santa. So to understand where Santa comes from, we have to go way back and look at imperialism, and specifically Nicholas Klaus Kringle Christmasson, a man whose raw lust for power created the Santa we know today. Christmasson, who went by Klaus, was a wealthy member of the Danish bourgeoisie in the latter half of the 19th century, but he wanted more. He lusted after the imperial possessions of his peers in countries like France and Britain, but all the world was pretty much taken up, and the Danish military had no interest in fighting for a bigger stake, no matter how many letters and articles he wrote. And according to Christmas historian Erik Julesbaum's book, The Age of Santa, Christmasson wrote 162 letters and 62 published articles calling for Danish imperial expansion between 1861 and 1873. But his cries fell on deaf ears, and in 1874 he took his wife, affectionately known to him as Mrs. Klaus, and decided to set out on his own expedition to discover new land that could be claimed without any serious military effort. Of course, most of the world was mapped and claimed, but Klaus felt he might be lucky if he went to the unexplored north. Reports of their journey are sketchy, relying mostly on Klaus's own accounts, which are generally held to be wildly exaggerated. Evidence for this is often cited in his account of his memoirs of the Battle of Penguin Bay, where he claims he fought 2,000 armoured penguins. However, this is patently false, as penguins only live in the southern hemisphere, and the only penguins known to make armour live exclusively on a small island off the south of Chile. But one way or another, it does appear that he managed to find an as yet unknown population of magical elves, untouched by civilization. They possessed not only the key to eternal life, of which Klaus and Mrs. Klaus took full advantage, but also a magical book, whose nature is still unknown to science, whose pages are said to reveal the inner secrets of any human the reader focused on. The elves, however, were completely unaccustomed to the deceit and firepower of Western imperialism, even if enacted just by two people. And by a combination of coercion and violence, Klaus was able to enslave the elves. The elves initially proved adept at a variety of technical tasks, and very creative. When Klaus and Mrs. Klaus arrived, they thought of them as new members of the community, and built them a fine house willingly. Klaus, sensing their gullibility, then persuaded them to build him a workshop. Little did they know, they were then to be imprisoned in it. Once the elf population was fully imprisoned, Klaus adopted the techniques of the French, English and Belgian colonizers he so admired, and by a system of brutal physical penalties, ensured an effective production line on which the elves worked long hours, 364 days a year, ironically with only a break for Christmas. Contrary to his initial intention, Klaus never declared his colony as an official territory of the Danish Empire. Instead, seeing perhaps the way of the times, he incorporated it as a publicly listed company outside the jurisdiction of any state, effectively forming a fully privatized city-state, largely populated by elf slaves under Klaus's command. Initially, he used his workshop to produce weapons, using the book's powers to identify just which countries would need arms, and then selling to both sides of every major war from 1879 to 1911, and developing new weapons from the materials of the Arctic, including some of the first genetic engineering to produce the world's first fully weaponized flying reindeer, fully 4 years before the Wright brothers achieved mechanical flight. But in 1912, with war emerging on the horizon in Europe, Klaus found a new niche, as an intelligence operative. Word had got around Europe of not only the flying reindeer, but also the book Klaus had stolen from the elves. In the end, he used the book to do intelligence operations for both sides, as well as flying reindeer reconnaissance over the Western Front under the code name Santa, Latin for saint, a name granted him for the key intelligence he gave. But the real boost to Klaus's empire came in the years that followed the war, in the 1920s, when Klaus signed a lucrative deal with the Coca-Cola Company, and Santa Co, as we know it, was born. Part 2. Santa Co is coming to town. So with the Coca-Cola deal, they worked out how to use Klaus's power to make a public figure whose ability to inspire awe and warm feelings would make him an untouchable cultural icon. The final details of Santa's character were worked out in secret meetings with Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, who had pioneered the use of Freudian psychology in modern advertising. Together they devised an advertising mascot which was so lovable it could hide any controversy. They made full use of Klaus's productive capacity, his immorality, and his fleet of flying reindeer, and made the ultimate corporate legend to enforce consumerism on innocent children. The benefits to Coca-Cola were in the huge spread of their advertising, as the Santa mascot was widely used, but always coded with their own colours. And for the new Santa Claus, there was not only the perfect cover for his continued intelligence operations, but it also gave him huge opportunities in franchising, selling appearances by doubles, some highly unconvincing, but sporting his trademark look as sculpted by Bernays. An operation so successful that now, around Christmas, millions of his workers descend upon shopping centres, schools, and media outlets to portray his supposed message of goodwill. The genius of the idea, however, according to Bernays in his memoir Santa and Oedipus, was the seemingly socialistic actions of Santa would in fact not just enforce consumerism, but also subtly reinforce the class structure. Poorer kids would be given cheaper presents than rich kids, and, seeing this class division normalized by a supposedly benevolent, magical being, children would come to see their social position as natural, and if that was all Santa thought they deserved, that must be their natural lot in life. This concept was called Santa Darwinism. Further, the naughty and nice system could be and was used to discourage over-socialistic behaviour in children, particularly during the McCarthy era. However, of course, no lie is perfect, and as time went on, information slipped out of the cracks. After the escape of the elf whistleblower, Dancing Elfsberg, in the 1950s, news of the conditions of elves slipped out, causing investigative reporters to go to the North Pole. This caused further outrage, and Santa Co was forced to issue a worker protection policy outlining the worst of the previous abuses. However, even today, elves are said to work 12 hours a day in cramped conditions. In 2010, Elfhemy Skihill, another investigative journalist and the grandson of the previous escapee, Elfsberg, reported Santa's workshop now controls elves with the latest technology, using microchipping and giving elves personal devices which dictate the minutiae of their work pattern to the second, counting down each act to ensure they meet their tight delivery schedule. Paying conditions are docked for even the slightest infraction and, as wages are already low, and the elves are charged rent for their cells in the bunkhouse, this means up to 15% of elves are unable to earn enough to support themselves in their enforced accommodation at any one time. Skihill reported that severe debt was punished by spells of imprisonment in a labour camp next to the factory, where, by Santa Co regulations, imprisoned elves had to work for free. When challenged on this issue, Santa argued that his regulations were perfectly in line with the 13th Amendment of the US Constitution. Santa's intelligence operations, which he continued, were often boosted by the fact that his reputation made him lovable and trusted even by the leaders of both sides of global conflicts. However, they have brought him trouble as well. In 1944, some dissent was heard from reports Santa was delivering information to both sides of the Second World War, smuggled in children's presents. The controversy was, however, mostly handled behind closed doors. Also largely hushed up was Santa's 1964 conflict with the Martians, still top secret to this day. Santa, having developed space travel through the reindeer tech in 1954, had been trying to expand his devious present-giving franchise to Mars ever since. However, the Martians, seeing his attempt was to achieve mass influence over their world, made efforts to outlaw his company. and so Santa responded with force. The Accord of Mars, signed at the end of the conflict, ensured Santa's right to expand his franchise across Mars, making his corporate empire interplanetary, something no other country on Earth has ever achieved. Discretion could not be maintained any longer, however, when in 1969 the Arctic missile crisis erupted, when it emerged that Santa, due to his tactical location, had agreed to host both American and Soviet nuclear missiles in his territory. The 1971 Arctic Nuclear Disarmament Accord was the result, but this did not stop Santa getting in similar trouble in the Cold War again, as in 1974 it was exposed he had been hosting secret torture facilities, again servicing both sides, with CIA and KGB sheds hidden from each other by a small mound and a line of fir trees. This situation had apparently persisted for 17 years before it was noticed. Further scandal came upon Santaco with the release in 1984 of the best-selling book Tears of a Reindeer by Holly Day, which documented not only the terrible conditions under which Santa's modified reindeer were kept, but also the cruel experiments carried out on them to enhance their power and lovability. It was in this book that the severe doses of steroids and antibiotics used to enhance the reindeer's abilities, previously thought to be just magical, were first revealed, as well as even more shocking experiments. For example, the famous shine on the red nose of the Rudolph class, a breed developed in the 1960s, was maintained by keeping the reindeer constantly infected with a genetically engineered virus made from the cells of glowing jellyfish. The effect requires daily nasal injections, but also constant treatment to stop the disease killing the reindeer, leaving it in constant pain. And the glowing nose offers only aesthetic benefits, making the reindeer more lovable, with no practical use. By the age of 5 years, these Rudolphs are generally in need of dialysis, too expensive for Santaco to pay for, and so are usually put down, even though, as Holly Day points out, the Santa Company has a secret to immortality, and so, if they kept them healthy, they could have reindeer that lived forever. In 2014, another elf whistleblower, Elfwood Snowdin, escaped the Santaco compound and brought the company to international attention again, revealing how Santa, post 9/11, had begun collaborating with the NSA in America, GCHQ in the UK, and other security services to use his magical book, now automated with a machine which read and recorded the book data at extreme speeds unreachable by any human or elf, to conduct mass surveillance on, effectively, everyone in the world, with book readouts being sent to mass data storage centers for various agencies. In 2015, this scandal worsened, when data from the book surveillance was found to have been bundled and sold for profit to companies including Amazon and Facebook. Part 3. Conclusion. So to this day, the Santa Corporation, a company with a history of war and espionage, as well as corporate corruption and deception, and a complete lack of moral compass, continues to operate with impunity. A company that abuses its employees and takes advantage of its effective status as an unrecognized city-state to flout all national and international laws, and which conspires with companies and governments to support capitalism and conduct surveillance on the entire world. This is a problem of unquestioned capitalist corporate power, and as we have seen, reform won't work. This needs a socialist solution, a revolutionary solution. Every year we fail to act, more elves and reindeer suffer, and Santa's hold on global power grows. We can no longer accept this criminal company's unchecked power over our planet. In the past, people have called on us to boycott Santa. Well, I say go further. Let's strike! Occupy your stockings, defend your Christmas trees, barricade your chimneys, collectivize the sleighs, let the reindeer free, and give the workshop to the elves. To the rooftops, comrades! You have nothing to lose but your paper chains. This year, let's finally take down this festive tyrant and take back Christmas! Okay, so that was just a fun little video that we thought we'd make to take the piss out of ourselves a bit and give you something to watch this Christmas, seeing as Christmas fell on our usual upload day, and, well, obviously I wasn't going to be uploading in person on Christmas morning. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you liked it, and maybe we'll do some more comedy videos for other events in the future. If you're really enjoying this video, or any of the others from my channel, then why not throw me some money on Patreon? This helps me live and survive while I make this stuff, and I really love making it. I would really like to be able to do it with more and more of my time, so the more money you give me, the more chance that more and better quality videos can be made. And thanks very much to those who've already given me money on Patreon. You guys are a wonderful lot, and I'm really chuffed to have so many patrons so early in my channel. So thanks to Emily Dickinson, Natty, Zabesian, Brett Long, Daniel Stenson, Geshtin, Sinead Kerwin, The Cooler Noah, and Thoughtsline. and extra special thanks to Peter Benzoni and George Soros. You're all amazing people, love you very much, and happy holidays to you all. I'd also like to thank @BlueLegenda, who came up with the idea for doing a comedy video like this for Christmas, and who has done pretty much all of the visual stuff you've seen today, because it's been mostly animation. So this video would definitely not have been possible at all without him. So thanks very much. If you were waiting and hoping for episode 4 of The Dark Side of Liberalism, then that will be coming out next week hopefully, probably again on Tuesday. So I hope to see you there and then. Until then, have a really good holiday period, whether you celebrate or not, and all the best to you from me and @BlueLegenda here at the Dumpster Flower channel. And we hope you all have a very happy new year. So with that said, bye!